This episode is about minutes 106 through 110 of Solo: A Star Wars Story, featuring Suzen Tekla Kruglnska. Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Chrysanthi Tan, you can call me Xanthi, and today is all about minutes 106 through 110 of Solo: A Star Wars Story, which starts with Beckett leaving Han on Savareen and ends with Beckett coming back. By that I mean walking through Dryden's door to betray Han. I'm very excited to welcome Suzen Tekla Kruglnska to the show, first-time guest, but I'm a fan of your appearances on Star Wars Minute, so thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I love this show. I've been listening to it, love it, and I was kind of like secretly hoping you might invite me. Actually, I was like, that'd be nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
no. I was kind of thinking like, gee, that would be cool if she asked me on. So thank you. I'm so thrilled because I'm not worthy, but yeah, I love it.
I have been thinking about it since you were on last season for The Last Jedi, actually. So this season you were on Star Wars Minute, maybe a little bit earlier in the film, and I have to say, like, your episodes sparked a lot of conversation on my Discord server. So like,
really?
Yeah. So we were like deep in conversation because you were on like a series of minutes that were really talking about droid stuff. And so like the stuff that droid sentience is like one of my pet topics, like sort of just like sentience in general and like AI in general is sort of one of my pet topics that I like to talk about and think about, or sometimes hate to talk about, but obsessively think about, so can't help but talk about. Right. And so we were just like really having some good conversations that week.
Oh man, I totally missed that. You should have told me. I would have loved to have seen that or jump in and just like, but who knows? Maybe I would have been distracting if, but I mean, I don't know if anybody was criticizing me. I wouldn't, people should feel free to criticize me for what I'm saying, but I would love to. I'll have to go back. Yeah, I'll read that.
Well, I mean, I think when people say things that spark conversation, I think that's just, I feel like even controversial, like, because you were saying some pretty like wild things, like quote unquote, like I remember you were like getting a lot of reactions from people because you were saying things like droid like sex toys, or not sex toys, but like droid sex companions would be like the most ethical. You were talking about like the ethics of that, and so that is always like that is all. I just remember thinking like, oh, I wish I could have had like much more of a follow-up conversation with you. And I though you were talking about a completely different subject last season during The Last Jedi, I can't really remember what you were talking about. I remember having similar thoughts, sort of that like, oh, at least like whether or not I agree with you, you say things that are kind of beyond the maybe just jokes. You say things that actually I would like to follow up on and interrogate further. So yeah, now you're here. So we can have a more conversation about other stuff.
Yeah, not about sex droids. Yeah,
not about sex droids, but maybe other stuff will come up. Yeah. So we are talking about this hilarious. The way that these 5 minutes broke down is pretty funny because
it's so perfect.
It starts and ends with Beckett leaving and coming back, which is
a little story.
Yeah, I mean, that didn't take long, did it? Like,
yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. It's just this beautiful, perfect little story arc. It's like, bye, Beckett. Thanks for being supportive of my little plan. And too bad you're not doing it. And then, yeah, it's kind of great. I love it. And, so they had to put in some notes. I mean, even that little amount of space, they put in some notes, like I think that kind of foreshadow what's going to happen.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, it's interesting to see that. So again, Han and Beckett are saying goodbye. He's told him his little plan to betray Dryden, and so of course Beckett is pretending. We know now, spoiler, that he's pretending to be like, oh yeah, good luck, man. I'm sorry, I'm not participating, but good luck. And I just like that you see at the very, very, very last moment where we look at Han's face in that scene, and the music also gets in there, is him just you see the wheels just turning a little tiny bit, like he's just like yeah, like I think they did a little note of foreshadowing in his seeing his wheels turning, and I think again you hear it in the music of him thinking, yeah, this I know it's going to happen. Like I've already read this guy, and this is the end of my playing with you. Also, you're playing with me, I'm playing with you. It's just a little reveal, I think.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's play a little bit of that because I'm curious what part. I think I know the part that you're calling like the music wheels spinning, but we'll see. All right. So I'm going to start at the beginning of these minutes.
I got some debts to pay before I can head back to Glion Psalm and
get
into the Valley Court.
Here's the goodbye. Do you mean this?
Yeah.
Ah. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like wheels turning. It sounds like, I don't know. To me, I just picture that actual analogy of what happens in your brain.
Totally. I mean, it's like, it's just over and over again, just this DG, DG, DD, DD. It's sort of like vampy. But yeah, I like thinking about it. It's circular, sort of.
Yeah. And it doesn't reflect their conversation, which, naturally would be, on the surface, two people parting happily and everything's fine. And it's like, okay, there you go. Bye. And instead, the music's telling you something, that this is not finished. It sounds unfinished. And again, it sounds like wheels turning. And it just sounds like something's working in his brain, and we know this. It feels unresolved, right? That the sound of it also sounds. The end of it is also unresolved, so something's coming.
Yeah, I think it sounds. I think that makes complete sense, and I hear it also now that you said it as wheels turning. So thank you. Subtly, the little Han Solo theme comes in over it on the trumpet. Just right, we'll replay it. We just missed it. Okay, let me go back a little bit. There we go. And then a little key change. And this is also the young Han Solo theme, but slower. And it's funny because without even looking at the visuals, I can tell that it's an aerial view, an aerial shot.
Absolutely. It is. It's just, you absolutely do not need to see it. It's an aerial shot. It's a really lovely landscape. And you can they have, I think, a little bit, where you're just about to, or get to it, the next point of that recording, you hear a little bit of the sand blowing, I think you can hear. I think they put in a little sound of the sand, but the music just evokes that sand, kind of the sand blowing, I feel like.
Yeah, I think it's always so funny. Like, earlier this season, like probably on a couple episodes, we were really getting into flying music and sort of just like soaring music and just like in the air music. And I feel like it's such a vibe. And it even popped up like during the Obi-Wan show as well. There's something about it. Like I could just always tell. You can always tell when when we're in the air or like when the camera's in the air.
Like I suppose it's a little cliche, but it works. It's a really lovely example of it. Like there's nothing, it might be cliche so we could tell, without seeing. So there must be something cliche about it that we can pick that up so easily. And yet it's just, really well done. I mean, I think it works, I
don't know. Well, see, now I always think of like cliche feels like trope feels one thing. Like maybe it's a trope, but I feel like something is something a cliche when it's just a trope that went too far for someone's taste?
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, I would consider that not cliche. I would just say, maybe it's a trope that works, but I like it.
Yeah. You could say that. Yeah. I guess at this point in movie history that we recognized it so insanely easily. Like it's just so, that to me, it does tip a little bit into cliche in that it's just like, it just feels just a little too easy. So that's why that's why the word cliche popped into my head, because it was just like almost it feels a little like it's hammering it over your head a little bit. But in a well done way.
Yeah, it's in the ear of the beholder. So as all of this is, I think like it's a technique used that tends to evoke a certain response. And when one is hyper aware of that response, it can be, I'm like that with a lot of things. Annoyingly, wish I wasn't, but here we are.
Well, it's nice that they fold it into it. It works lovely with, perfectly, lovely way with what came right before it. In that, there is some release there because they felt that you felt this buildup of tension, something's going to happen, and then it's just a nice transition that, I don't know, just broadens the whole thing and fills your heart a little bit. Like now you're feeling for him whatever emotional thing is going on inside him, and it has an emotional resonance. So that, like you said, that makes it much more than a cliche. It's actually, it's well done because it has an emotional resonance and expansive. And here we go, transition. And, you just know something kind of big's about to happen.
I would add that, like, I think another thing that makes this, I don't know, work for me is that it doesn't stay there for very long. And it basically, like, everything that happens in this, 1 minute of scoring is pretty forward moving. It's pretty kinetic, like it's pretty flowing. And that's something that, John Williams is a master at. And in this score, John Powell tries, his best to evoke John Williams's flowing forward style rather than the pulsing forward that, as John Powell has said in interviews, that he and most composers do, is they pulse forward, and someone like John Williams is kind of a cut above that flows forward. And so in interviews, John Powell has said that he tried his best to do flowing more than pulsing, which I think here, I think it really shows. And I think for me, maybe the contrast, I'm thinking in contrast to other modern films and shows, which I think do a much worse job at trying to flow forward. Not that they're I don't think they're even really trying to flow forward. Like I think so many scores, so many recent scores that I've heard are really bad to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is like much better. I think I find this part of the score like much better than some recent things that I've heard in the past month.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, again, that I misused the word cliche is also a mistake when you talk about John Williams or John Williams-esque stuff, because I think he wasn't afraid to be very classical, not in the classical sense, but classical in the classic score kind of sense, to feel like I can use these traditional devices. He's not afraid to do that, whereas other people are like, oh, I gotta be cutting edge. I can't, again, I can't do these tropes. I gotta do something different. And he's like, no, I mean, and I know this wasn't necessarily John Williams, but that, that style that, if you're going to imitate John Williams, you wouldn't be afraid to go to a place that is familiar, but do it really well,
Here's my, again, this is not John Williams, and we'll get past this point in a second. But I think when composers say, I'm not gonna try to be like John Williams, I'm gonna do my own thing. I think in reality, and I say this as I'm a composer myself, it's hard to do. It's hard to imitate John Williams. It's not even just like, I'm gonna forget the old, I'm gonna in with the new. I think it's just like, I think there's a lot of deflection sometimes that I hear in composers say, I'm going to try I don't want to be like John Williams. Most people couldn't be like John Williams if they tried really hard.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
So, but here anyway, like the theme, like even in the course of, we already got the young Han Solo theme twice, but like in two different ways. So here, let's go back. So here, first solo trumpet, and then when we get to this key change, I hear the wind that you mentioned. So here, now it's a different key, and it's augmented. The theme is augmented, so it's slower, it's stretched out over more space. So already that's different. And here it flows into the Secrets theme. So like,
yes,
it doesn't like just stay there comfortably, like, I don't know. Play the theme a few times and get it really like toe tapping. No, it doesn't like let you tap your toes. It flows into the next scene. Like it flows with the film, not like a song.
Yeah. And the fact that he does that juxtaposition of Han and then Crimson Dawn's theme. What do you call it, the secret theme? Why, I was wondering why. I must have missed where you explained why you call it the secret.
Oh, John
theme.
Powell calls it the Secrets theme.
That's what he calls it.
Yeah,
okay.
but you're right. But it is the Crimson Dawn theme. Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that in that such close proximity he juxtaposes those two things, it's like face off. You know, he kind of sets it up in your head subconsciously.
Mm-hmm. And in just a bit, he's going to weave in another theme, just in such a seamless way. So we might as well just hear that. Okay, so I'm gonna keep that low until the music comes higher so that YouTube doesn't, Okay, so now Han and Kira with secrets in the background.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that kind of
It's
game.
very subtle. Like in the background we hear dee 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 dee, and then also weaving in is dee 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 dee. So that's a nice little detail there.
Yeah.
For those following along on the soundtrack, this is in the track called Kira Knows a Bit More Than Han. 6M36-37-38. Nice little title.
Yeah, I like that title.
Yeah. Good. It's a catchy title for sure. What do you think of this whole scene, or like the music or sound?
I thought it was interesting so I don't know if I'm jumping ahead too much, but when they go from the cloakroom to the elevator, there's an edit. There's a very clear edit, right? Like as if they took out a scene or there was music there.
That's literally
and I
in my
only
notes
noticed
too.
that. Yeah, I only
is it
noticed
after
that,
just a little bit more than you?
It's exactly between it's whenever I don't remember the dialogue, but visually it's between the cloak and the elevator. And it's a clean edit. And I didn't notice it till like the 7th or 8th listen, because I would not have noticed that. That's why it's so much fun to do this. And I was like, oh, that's really odd. I wonder if that happens more often in soundtracks, or, like when you're actually watching a movie than I ever notice, that clearly there was an actual edit, the chop between two pieces of music. But, you almost don't notice it. It's done nicely. But yeah, there's definitely something taken out there, right?
I would say this is probably one of the more clunky edits. And okay, so Kira says it's not that kind of game, Han. The object isn't to win. It's just to stay in it as long as you can. And then Han says, you don't know everything. And Kira says, no, just a bit more than you. And so we'll listen to that part because I don't know, I wrote in my notes, these sound like really disjointed music cuts / overlapping of stems, ? So listeners, you be the judge. Let's listen to that.
The object isn't to win, it's just to stay in it as long as you can.
You don't know everything.
No,
It's coming up.
just a bit more than you.
I knew it. My men, they all said there's no way they pull this off. Kira's not ready. That's what they...
Okay, I didn't hear it as much as I normally do for some reason.
Yeah, I think the one I noticed is before that. It's definitely, it's before they start talking in the elevator. It's like literally
you're
just
right.
between...
Oh, I wrote the note in the wrong place. Yeah. Never mind. It's at 50 seconds. That's yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay. That was a false alarm. So if you didn't hear anything, you're right. Okay. It's after they're fine. Wow.
Yeah.
Weapons. I didn't bring them.
They're fine.
There, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the whole
It's
environment
really-
changes.
Once you know it, you're like, oh, it sounds like a huge mistake, once you notice it. But I literally never, like, I'm not kidding. It took like 7 listens for me to even notice it. So it's sort of funny how then once it's there, it's like, it's like this big red mark.
Yeah, it's a big red mark indeed. Let's compare that to how it is in the actual track. I didn't hear a cut there.
Nope.
Let me go back further. Okay, Kira knows a little bit more than Han. I mean, this wouldn't be the first time that one of John Powell's cues were cut. I mean, one of the examples that really stood out to me was actually also with Han and Kira moment, and it was during the Cape Closet scene, like, you know.
Yeah, I watched that episode.
Ago.
Yeah, I know. Right. So they just chopped the whole ending off, right?
Yeah. Well, like they added like a different type of ending that kind of made it just fade out, and that part made me sad because it didn't let the whole like theme flourish. And I think the theme is very like earnest and beautiful, and the theme itself, when you're allowed to hear the whole thing, sells me on their romance more than the film does sometimes when those moments are reduced. Yeah, but that's just me. I don't know. It's interesting that this is happening with another Kira moment.
That's a whole other layer of like this movie making process is the music editing and how well that's done and how masterfully that's done. And I was, lucky. Like, so what was interesting, I did a Shining series, a series on the Shining podcast, and that has some of like the most unbelievably skillful music editing where he like just, the way he fit pieces of music that he took from the outside. Some of it was composed, but most of it wasn't. It was pieces, from Ligeti and Paderewski. And how, if you read, and I talk about it on the podcast, but how he fit it together. It's Gordon Stainforth was the name of the editor. Is just masterful, and it's just a masterclass in how you do it. And he also even just would layer different pieces of music over each other, like for the finale scene where Jack's in the maze and everything's crazy. And it's stuff you would never like. You just have to hear the story of how he put it together to appreciate like how difficult it was. And then when you listen to it, you can hear this just unbelievable nuance and magic, and just the detail is incredible. Anyway, so that was my lesson in how it's not just the composition, it's the music editing can be just such an important role. It's just something that people don't talk about much.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely huge. I mean, all the parts of making the music happen. I mean, different films will have different strategies. Some it's more composer, performer. With the movie, I just saw Everything Everywhere All at Once yesterday, and I was looking. I always wait until the very end of the credits. Like, I want to see all the music personnel, and it's just like so much music personnel on that film, and a lot of films where like it takes a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of minds in there sometimes making this happen, and a lot of different ways that things are done. And that's a movie where music editing is also plays a big part. So you're talking about your podcast. That's The Shining. How do you say it? 237? 237?
I call it 237, but yeah, it was every 2 minutes and 37 seconds. I mean, it was part of the movies by minute tradition. Yeah. But I did 2 minutes and 37 seconds because that was, the number on the door, the famous door in The Shining.
That's cool.
But yeah, that one episode, I did an episode with I did one on just the music of The Shining, which was Jonathan Stern, this musicologist who I met like at the public library, who's amazing. He's just obsessed with Kubrick, and he had a PhD in musicology and was writing a book on something or other. But, he's not like a huge name, but he was so interesting. So that's one episode. But then I also did one on just Gordon Stainforth and how he edited it. Like, I did that, I would do the 2 minutes and 37 seconds, then I would have a tangent, and those were the tangents I did. And so if people are interested in music, those are really interesting episodes. And Gordon Stainforth listened to it recently. I had sent it to him, and then I never heard from him. And he listened to it pretty recently, and he tweeted me. He was like, "This is the best synopsis. You got everything right." He's like, "You got everything right." Like,
can you send me a link to that episode later?
Yeah, it was the nicest compliment I ever got. Yeah.
That's
I'll
very
definitely
cool.
do that.
That's so cool. Yeah. Well, I forgot where we were on the disjointed cut. the little the little cut there. I mean, it's
So the question is, was there a way to fix that in a better way? Like, could they have done that? You know, was there something they could have done? I mean, obviously, that is the challenge, is matching the visuals with the music. And sometimes you probably come to this point where just there isn't a really beautiful solution, you know?
Well, without knowing exactly what went into that, I think I if I were to speculate, I would think that was probably a cut that happened more last minute, because if a cut comes early enough in the process, the composer can re-record, can do another, you know, they can help smooth that out more. And so that sounded to me like in the one with the cape closet, it sounded like maybe there was like an alternate, like that was a smoother, you know, that was a smoother cut. This one just sounded like they had these pre-recorded, you know, cues, and they had to somehow just make it work. It sounded like they didn't have time, you know, to rewrite the ending, you know, rewrite a transition or something.
Yeah. And again, it's barely noticeable.
Just it's only noticeable if you hear it, which I think most people don't. And of course, the sound design can help smooth it over. And you're gripped by the conversation, you know, you're gripped by the intrigue and all that stuff. So you're nicely distracted. If it was something that was a little less distracting, you might have noticed it more easily, actually, I think. Dialogue helps. And dialogue definitely is in the forefront here, because dialogue is a big part of the sound mix, of the overall sound mix, as it should be. So after this cue finishes up, this is when Dryden, you know, we're going into Dryden's living room on the yacht. And then we actually have no music for 90 seconds. And it's during this whole conversation where Dryden is, you know, he's kind of messing with them, you know? He's like,
oh, yeah.
My men, they all said there's no way they could pull it off. Kira's not ready.
You know, from the first word out of his mouth, you know he's bullshitting them. And I think it's done a little, he does a magnificent job handling it, but I think it is a little heavy-handed, and I think that's Ron Howard. Like, that's typical, to me, I don't know, it's typical Ron Howard, where Ron Howard's always a little heavy-handed and a little too, he goes for the more obvious take than the more layered and nuanced take. But at the same time, and I'm forgetting the actor's name, I'm blanking out. I always blank out on people's names when I'm on camera. What's his name?
I'm trying to remember too. I'm bad at actor names. I can't think of it.
I get brain freeze. But anyway, he nails it. He nails it. I mean, he's just like, he does it beautifully, and he's got such style, you know, he adds a lot to it. Like, you're just, I don't know, there's something about it. Like, he puts so much personality into it that you don't mind that you know exactly what's going on. It's a little too obvious, but you don't mind because it's fun. He makes it kind of fun, you know, the way he executes it. But it is a little bit too obvious that he's like, like he's about to pounce on them. You know it the second they walk in the door.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. By the way, it's Paul Bettany. And
Paul Bettany.
Yeah, I'm going to put up a visual, which I always forget to do this at the beginning of the episode, but here's a visual of where we are in the minutes.
Look at all that mud. Look at all that mud. I'm going to be one of those people. Look at all that mud. No, I'm sorry.
Because it's so dark.
Oh, God.
Yeah. This is a very dark.
You know.
I know, definitely.
You've mentioned it. I know it's like every episode you got to say it, but you got to say it. Look at that.
It's very dark. It's a very dark, yeah. To be fair, here's the last set of minutes. Well, that's also kind of low saturation. Here's the set of minutes before that. I mean, sometimes you get really cool pops of color. These are all ones that I prepared for the last, you know, several episodes, but they're all overall dark still with nice pops of color. Yes. But this one, Dryden's whole, yeah.
It's muddy. It
is muddy. You're right. I mean, I definitely agree. So I think Paul Bettany does such a good job that I'm like you. Like, it is kind of heavy-handed, but also it's so scary. But also funny, like, especially when he, you know, is like, "Colo clawfish, anyone?" And he has that tiny little fork. The tiniest little fork. Like, he always has some, I don't know. I think what's it called? The stuff. What's it called? Oh my gosh. Crystal Beth was the one who told me about this. The stuff of a scene is like the kind of the little actions that you're doing that are not important to the scene, but it's like giving you something to do. So
The business of the scene.
the business of a scene. Thank you. The business of a scene.
I know, because I watched that episode.
Perfect. So the business of a scene here is that he is eating this colo clawfish with his tiny little fork.
Disgusting. This disgusting food. I mean, it's like it's a little bit repulsive. He's got, and that the fork is, again, it's a little pointy, like dangerous little tiny but dangerous object. Yeah.
It always reminds me of two things. One, I just went to Australia, and so on the plane flights, I had a chance to watch all of Our Flag Means Death because I don't have HBO Max. So I was like, while I'm on the plane, I'm going to watch all of this because I won't be able to finish it at home. And there's this one episode, this one scene where like, I don't know, it's like with a snail fork, where it was kind of like where Blackbeard is trying to like, you know, like kill him with skin him with the snail fork type. And it's this like high society like dinner. And it kind of also reminds me, since I've been at the airport, when you get sometimes I get things checked at luggage, and so in this case, my violin kind of, went through the security, whatever it's called, the carousel. No, not the carousel, the TSA thing. And they needed to search it. And I was like, what is in my violin case? And they pulled out a roll of tape. They were like, is this tape yours? And I was like, yeah. And then she like took a piece off of it and ripped it and was like, it's okay. And I was like, what was that about? Is tape not allowed? She was like, if I can't rip it, you can't take it. That's the rule. And I was like, what?
Oh, wow. Isn't that interesting?
That's interesting. And I also had a knife confiscated, but that was understandable.
Yeah.
It was like, the typical knife that you eat with like a meal. I accidentally had a knife in my bag, but they probably would have confiscated a colo clawfish fork too if I had one.
The tape is so interesting. Like as if you, I don't know, tape the pilot to the chair and he couldn't escape. I guess.
I was like, are you think we're going to suffocate people?
Yeah.
Like, I don't. It was so interesting. I just had to ask.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, the business of the scene here helps make it terrifying. Terrifying, but also in a campy way.
Yeah.
What do you think of the no music?
I think that works. It's a nice break, and I think it's I definitely appreciate those spaces where there's no music, and because then the music is more effective when it comes back in. It's just the contrast. When it comes in, it works. That works a little bit better, I think. So I think it's necessary, and this kind of conversation makes sense, that you just want to completely focus in on what's going on and what he's doing with this conversation and figure it out for yourself, without the music.
Yeah, I think having the no music just makes me pay way more attention to the conversation because there's nothing else to distract me. And just a lot of their deliveries are so, I don't know, either they're musical deliveries, or I think they're musical deliveries because there's no music, and so it makes me pay more attention to them. I'm not sure. Like I think of Kira's line when she says smugglers, and then like the way that she laughs, I feel like is so I don't know, that just lives in my head. Like here, I'll play a little bit of it. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but just the way it's so it's so awkward. Like I almost cringe as well. Because I know I know she's in so much trouble, but she's just trying to play it off at the moment. Yeah. Well, let's
commitment. He honored it, and I think we can all take solace in knowing how proud he would have been.
This line right
here, following his example.
Right here.
Han and Chewbacca behaved admirably. They'll make reliable smugglers, should we ever have the need, when they get their own ship.
Kira.
When she laughs, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, it almost sounds like she's kind of fucking up. Yeah, she's like trying really hard. She's a great actress, and yeah, that's a great little note. Where you can hear her kind of. She's trying to be confident. You can hear her faking it.
Yeah,
you can hear her faking it. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Also, this whole thing has like made me. I've been really thinking about themes or music that accompanies villains or like antagonists. And Dryden doesn't have a theme in this movie, though I see Dryden as the main antagonist. Like I would say Dryden is probably the scariest, most at this moment, biggest antagonist, probably the villain of the film in terms of just this particular adventure. But yeah, he doesn't have a theme. Do you have any thoughts about that? I have some thoughts, but not, they're just in progress thoughts.
I think I like that about this movie, and I think a theme would have been too much, because it is kind of nice that they spread the evil out a little bit. And, it's not just one person against another person. So it's not just this complete diametric thing. And it's a little more spread out. So, the top of the chain, you find out at the end. And there's a lot of debate about Kira's role. I argue that she doesn't really want to be doing what she's doing, and she's kind of just caught in this. But, you could argue she's a little bit of it. And then, and then the flipping of Enfys Nest's role, kind of flips at some point. And then how much of a villain was Beckett? And I like that. It's much more nuanced, and much more of an ensemble kind of situation. So yeah, Dryden is a little bit more of a ensemble villain, instead of the like pillar against another pillar of the movie. I like that. And so so I think a theme would have been a bit much.
I'm with you. I'm relieved that I'm glad that there's no theme for Dryden. I don't think everything needs a theme, and I think sort of the focus on themes in Star Wars gets a little bit much sometimes. Not that the themes themselves are bad, just that the themes alone aren't what make the music of Star Wars what it is alone, not alone. There's certainly a huge part of it, but also there is, kind of like what we already talked about, like just the subtle, the way that it's arranged, the way that it's played out, the way that it's set to music, the way that it's edited is also such a huge part of it. If we just had like just like a panel that had the themes and we just pressed play whenever it was time to play a theme, like that, that still wouldn't just be what Star Wars sounds like. It's a lot more, the glue is a huge part of it. And I think the lack of Dryden having a theme here says something about the nature of this film compared to probably the episodic Star Wars films, or like the classic Star Wars films 1 through 9, in that I think about like there's not a single Star Wars film 1 through 9 that has not had a theme for a villain. Like I feel like all of them, like Kylo, Vader, like they all have big themes, right? And I think it makes it separates. Okay, fantasy Star Wars has themes, a lot of themes. This is more like action Star Wars in a way. Like it does have elements of, classic Star Wars, but I think having a theme would kind of make it more fantasy like or something.
Right. More, again, opera like. And Rogue One too, even though that's very contrasty with Solo in the style, it's the same thing where it's much more of an ensemble, and you have so many more characters in the spotlight, and the lead character is slightly less in the front, less in the forefront, and so it doesn't lend itself to that either. And I like that. It's just again, it's just a nice switch up where I love Kylo Ren, I love Rey versus Kylo Ren. I love that. I absolutely love it. But it's nice to have something totally different, which is a little more like real life. So again, those are more of the space opera versions of what Star Wars is, and these are more of the like just a notch more down to earth. Even though Solo is very comic booky, it's still
that's true.
It's still it's more nuanced, and again, it's this take on, again, good versus evil is much more nuanced and complicated as it is in real life.
I think it
a little
is
bit
grasping at that But I think it's maybe only more nuanced because the protagonists themselves are more murky about it. I think the film itself, via like Enfys Nest particularly, still does kind of like, I think if the film cut away more to the Enfys Nest, we would get more of the good versus evil stuff. But since it is about Han, who himself reckons himself, he's ambivalent, it is murky just because of the people that we're focusing on.
Right.
Another thing about
he's complex.
Yeah, well, he's ambivalent,
Yeah.
which can be is I guess it's a sort of complexity. It's like a passive complexity, perhaps. Another thing that I just thought about was, okay, maybe if I ditched the fantasy, maybe if I just put aside fantasy versus action Star Wars. Also, when someone doesn't have a theme, that says something perhaps about their importance to an overall grand scheme of things. And in Rogue One, or even in like The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, like Snoke himself doesn't have a defined, like, no one is going around like singing the Snoke theme. In fact, when Snoke is having, one of his big torture moments in The Last Jedi toward Rey, we hear the Emperor Palpatine's theme. And it's more that Snoke is wrapped up in the whole dark side First Order. Like, he's kind of just the figurehead at the time of the dark side for First Order. He's just the one. And so here Beckett also is sort of just the one, but we do hear that we do have a strong secrets theme. So that is the bigger thing that Dryden is part of. It's not, Dryden himself doesn't matter, but Crimson Dawn and the secrets theme is represented. So it's about the bigger idea.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. What was one more thing that when you were talking, I was like, one more thing to follow up on? I can't remember, but that's okay.
Just to interject is, it's sort of interesting that like what they call Vader's theme, is really the Imperial March. And that, to me also makes it a little debatable if it's really Vader's theme. I mean, I don't know. It to me, it is, he's associated with him, but in a way, it almost feels like the intention was it more to be about the whole entire operation, right? I mean, I would be interested to know about the conception of that theme, if he was really thinking of Darth Vader, or if he was thinking of the dark side, in general.
Well, I think at the time it was created, the Darth Vader was the villain, and I don't think it was in John Williams' mind particularly that Darth Vader represents something very separate from that. Like now I think of Darth Vader as someone who is very separate from that and got caught up in that, but he's this whole other person. He's Anakin. He has his whole trajectory. He's not just one of the bad guys. But I think at the time that Empire Strikes Back came out, he was just like the bad guy. And so I think Vader's theme is perhaps, well, I know for a fact that to a lot of people, Vader's theme is synonymous with dee 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 with the Imperial March. Personally, I headcanon the Imperial March as Vader being more Vader when he's tied up with the Empire. I see it more like you, like where it's more of the Empire with Vader there. But
well, the title itself implies, that's kind of what is misleading. The title itself, and it's sort of like nicknamed Vader's theme, right? Like people just kind of ended up thinking of it that way. But I don't know. Anyway, it's sort of interesting, like whether like the assignment at the beginning was, well, is Vader going to have a theme? Or if it was the Imperial March and then it just got attached to him,
Well, I think this also goes into the gray area between like what we call themes and what are cue names and what are track names, because sometimes the names for themes get borrowed from the overall track, the overall cue, whereas I guess, obviously John Williams writes with themes in mind, but it may end up becoming part of a track called the Imperial March. And even something like Binary Sunset, if you look on the soundtrack, there's no track on A New Hope called Binary Sunset or the Force theme. Binary Sunset, we hear it on the track called The Princess Appears.
Right.
And so, so it gets all confusing. Plus, it depends on how big your scope, it depends on how expansive your perception, your box of the theme is. Some people consider the Vader's theme just dee 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 dee. Some people consider also the rhythmic parts, the marchy part, the march parts of it as well, part of the theme, or perhaps a separate theme. So, I always say, like, just like in literary analysis, there's so many different ways you can slice,
right.
Film music analysis.
Yep, that makes sense.
So Colo Clawfish is where we were. The reliable smugglers. This whole power conversation where Hans, we'd really appreciate the opportunity to work for you again, sir.
Yep.
And then,
yep.
Like, they think they pulled it off. Which, oh my gosh, it's so cringe watching it. I mean, not cringe because on purpose. It's having the desired effect.
Well, everybody's faking it, right? So we should assume that Han knows that Dryden has already, Han knows that Dryden's already talked to Beckett. So he's faking it. Everybody's faking it. Absolutely everybody's faking it except for Kira. Kira's the only one who seemed, I would assume,
Kira thinks she
was not aware. Yeah, she thinks they pulled it. She pulled it off. But Han's faking it as much as, so the two of them, yeah, it's sort of fun. I mean, everybody's faking it, but Han is the only one who really knows what's happening. So yeah, it's just a whole bunch of people pretending to act a certain way. And again, it could have come off much clunkier. And I think it's just on the edge of that. But they're such good actors that it's fine. It works. It's fun. It's just totally fun.
Wait, you think Han for sure knows what's up?
Yeah. I think he predicted Beckett's behavior. I think that's what we're supposed to come away with ultimately,
Okay.
is that he predicted Beckett's behavior.
Yeah.
That Beckett was going to sell him out. So he's totally like bullshitting in that direction, which is a little different from Kira. He's aware that Beckett has already undermined him.
Okay. Are you saying that based on how the rest of the film plays out? Because in this moment, I don't know if I would have gotten that just from what we've seen so far without knowledge of the rest.
Oh, I would never have gotten it watching the movie.
Oh, okay.
But it was set up when they were playing chess, when Beckett was playing chess with Chewie, he kind of laid out this concept that, like, you can't trust anyone,
right,
including me. You can't, So it's obvious what's, there's probably some people smart enough to have picked up on that and would have been able to figure that out, but I would never have been able to figure that out. It wouldn't have occurred to me. But yeah. That's what the fun of these kinds of movies is to see if you kind of pick up those clues early on. And that was a really heavy-handed clue, actually. The whole chess game and all that stuff. That was, it should have been obvious to us that there was a reason they were having that conversation.
Right. I mean, I think the fun of these movies, I think maybe my issue with the ending of this movie is that I don't think those movies are fun. I don't think those double cross moments are that fun. I think they're kind of lazy endings.
Yeah.
Not always. I mean, maybe the first few times it worked on me, but then maybe seeing too many movies like that, it just started to lose its appeal, perhaps. The trope became the cliche for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in general, this kind of movie, again, this isn't one of my favorite Star Wars movies. I know I'm not the first person to say that on your show. But I actually, each time I've now watched it, I've enjoyed it more each time, I have to say, which I'm surprised about. Because at first I was like, yeah, that's okay. But I just watched it again this morning. So it's been like 6 times, I guess, 5 or 6 times. Mm-hmm. And I actually teared up at one point and all that stuff. Like, it hit me even more. And I don't know why. I enjoyed it actually more. But that kind of thing, it's the kind of movie that's going to have that kind of double fake out. Sure. And that's not my favorite kind of movie. I agree with you. It's a little less, it's a little more like an old 70s Michael Caine movie or, whatever. It's like, like watching those old 70s movies, Pelham 1, 2, 3, whatever, where there's going to be some twist. And, it's at this point, it's too cliche to, you got to predict how the bank robbers are going to get messed up, It is. It's kind of it's that kind of movie. It's a heist. It's almost like a heist. Well, it is. This is
Yeah, it
obviously a heist movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
I guess maybe I should say I don't think that has to define the whole movie. Like when I say I don't like those kind of movies, I don't think it has to define the whole movie. I think I just mean those types of moments.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't. I actually am. I enjoy, like I appreciate and enjoy and get more satisfaction out of Solo now than I did before this season. And I kind of knew that doing this, like anytime I really get into analyzing something and really talking about it, of course, talking to different guests and hearing, having my eyes opened by different people, having new appreciation for different things, obviously doing something like this makes me appreciate it more. And so that's where I am now, is if I were to put on Solo, in a couple months from now when this season is over, I think I will have so many more things that I'm connecting with. And that's of course inevitable, but that double cross moment, I will still probably be just like confusing to me. Just like, okay, I know that's a plot point. But the way that it kind of makes you, oh yeah, I'm reframing this conversation, and oh, he knew it all along, and he was so smart all along. Like, I think that's just probably just hard for me to follow intuitively and take the performance at face value, I guess. And maybe it's an acting thing with me, is like if I can then go back and watch it and see it and feel that I'm seeing it in the acting that the character knows, then I think it seems more fine for me. But if it seems like the type of thing, and I don't know if that's what happened with this movie, but if it seems like the type of thing where the actor is playing it like they didn't know, and maybe they filmed two different endings and they didn't know which one was going to end. Like, I like to see a through line in the acting that kind of sells that. Then it just be a switcheroo.
Mm-hmm. I think that happens here. Like, to me, that they do pull that off. I think that you can see it, and on a second watch, like if you watch his execution of those lines, you can kind of see what he's thinking. Again, and even just that moment before when he's departing earlier in the scene, what we were talking about, where the wheels were turning. To me, again, that was a nice touch that like laid the groundwork for this scene right here. And again, this is a trope, like we said, it's a heist movie trope, but it's just, solidly done. They did it pretty well. Like it's not bad, Yeah, for sure.
The line that I think is really funny is when Han says, well, I guess we'll just take our payment and get going. I'm sure you've got competitors to crush and black markets to dominate.
Yes, that's it's really
funny.
Han Solo.
It's funny, but it's also like, if we're talking about Earth phrases that bother people, that to me is it just reminds me of Earth. Which, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just competitors and black markets to dominate, just like the Wall Street.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. But I do think
it sounds pretty, it sounds like something, like you said, it is, I didn't think of that it feels a little earthbound, because that always does bother me. I hate it when there's a little bit of an earthbound feel to anything in Star Wars. But at the same time, it feels Han-like,
Yeah. Crush and dominate are the two words that just make me laugh.
You're right. Crush especially. That's such a contemporary usage of that word. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So here Dryden is then, continues to ask Han to open the Coaxium in front of him. And Han kind of is, you want me to open it? Oh yes, Han, I really do. And at this point, we get music starts to come back again. This is the beginning of the track called Double Double Cross, 6M39-40. And it happens right as Han opens the Coaxium storage. I'm going to play a little bit of that so we can hear how the music comes back in, and then we will talk about that.
Show me what you brought me first.
You want me to open it?
Oh, yes, Han, I really do.
You can tell he has the colo clawfish in his mouth. Right here. can hear the.
Bring me one.
I don't think that's a good idea, Dryden. It's
So
very
yeah,
explosive.
thoughts.
I love the way, I mean, this is like utilitarian score, right? Like, and it's literally kind of drawing, again, you can see in your head just by listening to it what it's doing. And I love when he pulls the coaxium out, the sound of the music going whoop, right with that sound. You know, the music rises as it's rising, as his handful of coaxium is rising. So it's like it's not like, this is not arty stuff. This is more like utilitarian score. I think that's just, you have to have it when you have these kinds of really specific moments where, like, all right, now we've shifted gears. Like, now the tension is building. You had to have that beginning there where the like violins just start coming in and just you get that little chill. But then it's just sort of describing the movements of his hands almost as he's doing things, and I think that makes sense there. And I think it's just like descriptive scoring, and it works really well.
Do you mean when the music kicks in sort of louder? Like here, do you mean, let's see. That's a little before that. This part. Do you mean this part right here?
Yeah.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, so that's like, okay, there is a pedal tone comes in, and I think also it, like you said, it's utilitarian in that, like, I don't know, even without looking at the visuals, when that comes in, like, I think if we were to just listen to the beginning of the cue without the dialogue, like, we'll be able to tell when that happens. Right here. You can tell that's when he pulls the coaxium, because the cello and bass makes this little motif just kind of, it kind of anchors it.
Well, that bass, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm doing a visual which people can't hear, but it just sort of just makes it go like, whoa, I don't know. It opens it up. It fills it out.
Well, the bass line really sustains for a long time underneath the whole thing for a while, actually. But there's a little bit more, again, or I feel that, I don't know, maybe I'm imagining it. Because this is now where you're mixing sound and music, and sometimes it confuses itself in your head. But it seems to me that you can kind of, even if you took out the sound effects, kind of imagine what his hands were doing. But certainly the point where he's pulling out the coaxium, can't you hear, like, isn't there a whoop kind of music?
Have we gotten there yet?
Note, maybe, I thought we had. I mean, I think we had passed it at one point. But in any case, like, yeah, but that bass line, I mean, that bass note is just, it sustains for a really long time, and it's beautiful. I mean, that's just like, that's, the da-da-da-da-da is supposed to, I think, indicate tension, but the bass line there is like Jaws. It's like danger, like real danger. That's the coaxium can just explode at any moment. Piece of music, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's funny. I've said that on several episodes where I'm hearing something that sounds like something maybe in a higher register. Not that this is particularly high, but it's definitely higher than the bass. And then this like jazzy thing comes underneath to hold it down. I want to see if we can hear that thing that you're talking about, because I'm not sure. Okay, I think I should just go back a little bit. Huh. I don't know if I hear a voo. Maybe that was sound design.
Maybe I'm blending that sound and it sounded musical to me. You know what I mean? Like that's possible. But in any case, the other thing
let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
Because now I just need to know. Okay, so I'm scooting to where that is. Just trying to find the place. Okay, this should be about it.
Yeah, you know what? That's so funny. I would have sworn to you. I would have like put money down that the music did something there. I honestly, like that was in my notes and I just somehow that, isn't that funny? It's like almost an optical auditory illusion for me. Like it just,
I mean,
so
I think really it is the pedal tone that comes in, which is that bass tone that holds itself. It's called a pedal tone. When the pedal tone comes in, it's at the same time that the coaxium sort of does its hiss. And in my head, I also see the visual of it being pulled up. But the hiss is so much higher pitched. It's such a different like timbre and pitch than the bass that I think maybe when the bass comes in, it emphasizes the contrast. So it makes it seem like it's going up in a way. I don't know, definitely some sort of illusion or something like that.
Yeah. For real, I'm not kidding. I would have put down $50 like, no. There was a piece of music that went whoop. And now I can hear that. That's not true. It's so funny. Like, that's great. I mean, that's somehow that I love that works that way. It might have been also because of when I was looking at it, that added to the illusion, just seeing it. I mean, I did listen to this. You had given me just the audio without the visuals, and I did listen to that a few times, but mostly I was listening to it while watching the visuals. And so that might have also just added to the whole thing.
That's like how film works.
Yeah.
And I love, I love how that, I mean, it continues to, even knowing that sort of thing happens doesn't necessarily take away from the effect. So that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it is utilitarian, but I would say it's utilitarian and artful, in my opinion, to do that there.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. Well, now I'm like on the other side, like, oh yeah, that was really beautifully, artfully done because it just totally made my brain go somewhere where it wasn't even supposed to go. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But I love that bass note. I just love it. And I love, I wanted to mention to you one of my memories of like understanding how great soundtrack music was like, so in 1985, I was still a kid and I saw, speaking of Harrison Ford, I saw Witness, the movie Witness. And it has a Maurice Jarre soundtrack, and I'll always remember that was like the first time I ever just had a moment where I was like, this soundtrack is just doing stuff to my brain that like I can see. I just appreciated it so much. I don't think I'd ever really thought about it before, but there's a scene where this little Amish boy, he had witnessed a murder, and there's this famous scene where he is in the police office. He was supposed to be going through books identifying people, and he just couldn't find anybody who looked like the murderer. And he suddenly goes to this cabinet that has police awards, and he sees a newspaper article about a police officer, and he realizes that's the guy. And the music comes in, and it's just minimal. And listening to it now, I re-listened to it, and it sounded a little dated now. But at the time, I don't think I had heard anything quite like that. It was this minimalist synth, and I think if I had seen like Blade Runner, that would have ruined it for me too, because that was so well done in that movie, and I hadn't seen that at that point. But it's just this beautiful minimalist synth that just comes in and just sustains a note while he's looking at that picture. And while Harrison Ford kind of looks up and sees this kid recognizing the person and kind of walks over, and it's all done so beautifully. And I just remember thinking as a kid, oh, like that's a piece of art right there. Like, I don't know. I always remembered it. I remember it to this day, so many years later. And so I think that, maybe I hadn't seen enough really high quality movies up to that point because I was a kid, and so I mean, most of the music was very like adventure and all over the place, and I don't think I'd heard a really good minimalist kind of soundtrack, and I didn't like Vangelis and I didn't like that stuff, so I kind of had dismissed that, but it was so beautifully done in that movie. Anyway, so I have since then always really had a feel. That's kind of can grab me to this very minimalist. Taking over of just one note, just taking over your heart, like while you're watching something like that. And it just, so anyway, it reminded me of that.
Yeah, this does sound pretty minimalist. It's just,
yeah.
Oops. Just over and again. And then when the strings come in, they also do that. No. And the first time that we actually heard that was also with the Coaxium. It was probably in episode 17. I think I talked about that with Riley Silverman. Well, that would have been minutes 81 through 85. And when they were, when Han was getting it was briefly during the droid rebellion, and it's in the part where they're trying to, what is happening? What is happening? Okay, wait. They're like, I get it. It's dangerous. Was it that part? I don't know. Basically, it's also associated with Coaxium in that case. So like when I hear that, I think of this dangerous Coaxium being handled. It is sort of that nervous energy, especially since before then we hear the tremolos. We hear the like strings going like the very fast trembling, and then when the pedal tone, that bass note comes in, it gives the nervous energy that sort of weight, counterweight. Maybe that's what we're reacting to, is like how it's a counterweight, making the rest of it even like rise up.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not like a soundtrack expert. And so I don't know if I'm, but doesn't it sort of feel Bernard Herrmann, like the da-da-da-da-da with the, And then so it's like, in my head, I'm seeing Bernard Herrmann over Jaws, like the two things put together like perfectly, a beautiful marriage, that works perfectly.
Yeah, that's funny. Bernard Herrmann over Jaws.
Just layered perfectly over Jaws. I don't know, but of course Jaws, was a couple of notes, and I love the single note, and I learned about the pedal. What is it? Pedal point.
Pedal tone.
Is that what it's called? It's pedal tone. Yeah.
Pedal tone, pedal note, pedal point. It's all the same thing.
Yeah, I saw you talking. I saw that on your show, and so I started YouTubing like examples of that, and it's so great. I love it. It's so good.
Yeah, you start to hear it everywhere once you know what it is. You're like, oh,
and it's so effective.
Yeah,
it's so beautiful and effective. It's beautiful. I love it. I mean, now I just think that's, I don't know, like it's sort of silly. There are things you like and things you don't like as musical accents, and to me, that's just fabulous. Like it just really works. It just anchors the bottom in a way that's seemingly. It seems like it's mostly used to be a little bit ominous, right?
Sometimes, but pedal tones are used so often that it would be hard to reduce it to a single function. But I think pedal tones they're so ubiquitous that like I don't think they're good or bad. I think it just so depends on the situation. Sometimes they're, just like the use of the piano, it could be used in so many ways. I think sometimes pedal tones are overused, but I don't think they're always bad, or like, sometimes when they come in at the right time, that's the thing. A pedal tone, or probably any sort of a bass presence, can be the best thing ever. It can be exactly what you needed. And that's like the power of bass to me, is like, it can be just that thing that just makes you finally just like, oh, feel it. Like it could just be that thing that sinks into your stomach. Like, I don't know. Sometimes it's the best thing ever.
Yeah. Well, obviously, since I was just like YouTubing it, I was seeing great examples of it. So it was like, oh, this is great. But now I'll be looking for them everywhere. So yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah. Okay. So let's continue listening to how this develops. We still have the.
Bring me one.
I don't think that's a good idea, Dryden. It's very explosive stuff.
I never asked for anything twice.
So the pedal tone just changed. D. So quick pause. We have three basic things happening right now. So we have the pedal tone in the piano, kind of D. I don't remember what the notes are, but it's sort of changing periodically. And then we have the D, 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 mostly in strings. And then we also have this woodwind, sounds like an English horn perhaps, doing D, 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 D. It's sort of going. Could you hear all that?
Yes.
Yes.
And in fact, I forgot that the bass changes and that it's beautiful, that it changes at least twice, and it's beautifully done. Like, it's just like, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it is. And for listeners who missed the episode where I first explained the pedal tones, the name pedal tone comes from organs, like pipe organs, where that you have the party on top, which is the keyboard part, and then you have the pedals that you actually play with your feet, because playing the organ is actually very strenuous and you use your hands and your feet. And so on the organ, the very low notes, the huge, the very, very big pipes, the very low notes are activated by pedals. So your feet will be changing the pedals, but you don't change the pedals as often, as fast as you play the keyboard on top. You just change the pedal tone every, now and then, or probably less.
Right. So you can almost,
often. Yeah.
You can almost picture that here. Like, you can almost picture
Yeah.
if this whole thing was being played on an organ, you can imagine it. Like,
Totally.
that sound. Yeah.
That's how I'm imagining it. I'm like, when the note changes, I'm like, oh yes, they just pressed another pedal.
Yes. Yeah. It's great.
All right. So let's see.
Asked for anything twice, huh?
That's where it changes. Dee, dee, dee. So it is pretty minimal,
Careful.
but I like that we have the juxtaposition of these different timbres, because the strings offer something very different than the solo English horn, which is almost, it's almost sweet. It's a very smooth feeling, the English horn there.
Yeah. And it just adds some complexity, which is nice. Like, you
Yes.
kind of just at that point start needing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it
I
would
think
get
the
a little.
complexity-
It would get a little bit boring at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd start to notice that music a little too much if they didn't add a little complexity there, I think.
Yeah, it just makes it like more three-dimensional, where it perhaps would have sounded literally like two-dimensional with just those two lines beforehand. I'll also note that what the English horn is playing. I don't remember what the last note is, but I paid attention to the first four notes because I'm keeping track unofficially. I just notice it all the time of every time the DSCH motif, which is not a Star Wars motif, but it pops up in Star Wars. I think a lot. Other people are not so sure. Frank Lehman, if you're listening to this, here's another DSCH, because I know we talked about it on your episode. So are you familiar with DSCH?
No.
Are you familiar with Irae?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You would
The
have to.
Shining, hey.
Yeah, I was going to say, you would have to with The Shining, for sure.
Of course.
So the Irae, of course.
Yep.
Okay, so that, of course, is also a motif that pops up a lot in Star Wars, in every film. Not in every film, but throughout film. And if you want to know more about Irae, you can see a bunch of films examples, either on Alex Ludwig's website, Alex Ludwig, the Irae guru, who has been a former guest of the show. You can check out his episode called Diagnosing Irae, where we talked all about like how to know when a Irae is probably a Irae or when it's probably not. So
That's
that was
great.
Yeah, that was on A New Hope season, and coincidentally, he's actually going to be the guest next week too. So. So I always, whenever a Irae pops up, I say, Alex, do you think this one counts? So here, this is not a Irae, but I think the DSCH is is somehow connected to the DSCH, or like I think for me it evokes a similar thing. And DSCH is just the initials of Dmitri Shostakovich, Russian composer, and he would insert his initials DSCH into his own work, and of course, there's no music notes for S and H, but the cryptogram, it's like if you translate it from, it's German transliteration, basically. So in the German language, let's see, the note B flat is written B, but the note B natural is written H. So, and then E flat, then E is pronounced like the letter S. So like it's kind of, it's a stretch, but to fit his initials, he did match it to like the words with the German transliteration. So basically, it spells out to D, E flat, C, B natural is the motif, and you can hear it very prominently in his 8th string quartet. So let's listen to the beginning of that. So all the instruments are right now playing the DSCH. And this is all throughout his work. Like he does this in many of his pieces where you can hear either super obviously and over, like in this string quartet, but you'll hear it all the time. You'll hear it in different rhythms. Like, so when it pops up in Star Wars, I sort of pay attention because I swear there's DSCH all over Star Wars. So now let's play again from the scene, just to get this out of my system. It probably nothing, but I just like it. So here's in my headcanon, this is a DSCH, and it's going to be after Dryden says, like you hear it in the English horn. I never asked for anything twice, hon.
Bring me one.
I don't think that's a good idea, Dryden. It's very explosive stuff.
I never asked for anything twice, huh?
That was it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we go. I've gotten my piece out of the way. I've got, and
I'll buy that.
So the real explanation I have is that I don't think it's any sort of intentional, like, oh, I'm going to put a DSCH there to honor Shostakovich. A lot of composers certainly do the DSCH on purpose. Danny Elfman does the DSCH motif on purpose.
Wow. And
there's a lot of, composers who are big Shostakovich fans. Actually, John Powell himself is a Shostakovich fan, so maybe he did that. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be unheard of. I would believe it if the composer confirmed, but that quote unquote motif, that series of 4 notes, could and probably is just a natural byproduct of using this harmonic language and nothing more. Like oftentimes when DSCH shows up, it is intentional a lot of the time, but a lot of the time it's just it's 4 notes. You can arrange those 4 notes. It can just pop up.
Yeah. That happens, even just in film criticism all the time. I'm seeing, anybody who holds an axe in a movie, it's like, oh, that's a reference to The Shining, or any film that had an axe in it before The Shining. Oh, well, Kubrick, is referencing that or whatever. You know what I mean? You're just like, no, sometimes you have that scene. Yeah, exactly.
It's exactly that.
That actually annoys me a lot in film criticism. But it is fun. That is fun, especially knowing that Powell is a fan of his. That could be. It definitely could be.
Yeah.
It seems pretty clean. It's a clean. It's clean enough that it could be.
And I think a lot of the times also, like, because when you're a fan of another composer, it influences the way that you write without being intentional about it at all. Like just mannerisms from another composer will seep into your work, and that's very common. That's how everyone is with, their influences.
Of course.
And so I think a lot of the time these things come up in my own composing as well, where maybe I didn't mean it, but then after the fact, I'll be like, oh yeah, and also that's a DS Irae. That's funny. That's a little extra Easter egg. But like I didn't mean it, but like it did. But now afterward, I'm seeing it too. And yeah, but what you said about like the acts, I never specifically thought of it that way, but that's at some point, like not everything is necessarily a reference to this exact thing. It's sometimes a character just needs to hold an axe. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could happen. Like, so in this conversation, we only have about a minute left, but we kind of stick around in this Coaxium motif vibe for a while. And Dryden here is saying like, it looks exactly like the real thing. And Han's like, that's because it is the real thing. Dryden's like, yes, and I'm saying I would believe you. It's that good. But my associate already told me about your plan to rob me of my money and give the real Coaxium to Enfys Ness. Dryden, I don't know what you're thinking or what Kira may have told you. And then this other part that just makes me squirm. No, not Kira, not Kira. Kira, it turns out, has a weak spot for you, and we'll deal with that later. No, I'm talking about my other associate. Can you come in and join us, please? And of course, who do we get?
Ta-da! You get a big ta-da.
Yeah. Yep. It's Beckett. Of course.
It's Beckett.
Yeah.
Full circle from the beginning of the segment. Yeah. And so I again, you're right. It's a very quick twist there. But I like, again, if we're going to talk about the music, that it's suddenly they're playing a game and the music reflects that. So
yeah,
I just think that's kind of fun. And
so I'm going to now play from the cue without the dialogue, so we can hear what the music does in the transition, like before and after Beckett. So we will be able to hear through just the music alone when all this goes down. So this is obviously before. This is as things are escalating. Now it's just kind of holding. And so that big part is the reveal. And this is the I'm sorry, kid music. And that's the gang motif. The beginning of it, at least. Yeah. So it's a very efficient part of the score there.
Yeah, it's that's a little too, on the nose, maybe just a little bit.
It is on the nose. It is.
Yeah. It's a big ta-da, like we said. But I don't know, how many ways can you do it? You kind of have to, I guess. Like I assume it's hard to have that kind of scene and not have the ta-da in the music, right? I don't know. It just like, again, you just want to goose the audience a little bit to feel it a little more. And so, it's just a little utilitarian ta-da.
Yeah. I think moments like that do help me understand the significance of people being on screen, because I think if we were to rescore this and instead of that sort of ominous ta-da, if perhaps there was some other music to make it seem like when Beckett walks through the door, it's like that Beckett's going to actually save Han or something, I feel like that would have come off way different. And maybe it does, especially since we've seen Beckett in so many other contexts, it does really make it sink in that no, Beckett is the betrayer. Beckett's not here. He's not on your side anymore. He is the reveal. I think when the score does sort of heavy-handed things like that, I tend to think the scene probably needed it. Again, we would never know what it would be like without that. But I remember distinctly thinking during Rogue One, especially while watching Rogue One, there were certain parts where I felt like maybe the dialogue wasn't, I don't know, wasn't working for me. But I felt like the score, I could hear the score doing overtime, basically like working really hard to make me feel the thing that the character is supposed to make me feel. And yeah, it's just
I mean, there's no wiggle room here. I mean, again, it all leads up to someone betrayed. We just eliminate. It wasn't Kira. We all know it wasn't Kira who betrayed him, or maybe we don't. But now they've just eliminated her, and so who betrayed him, and boom. So there's no when he walks into that room, there's nothing else he could possibly be except the betrayer. So, there's not a lot you could do with that. I don't know, maybe because there wasn't a lot you could do with that, it would have been better without that overdone ta-da. Maybe it would have been more artful just to have that a little more quiet. And I don't know, I have to sort of, again, it's hard to imagine it unless you see it, but it is just a bit much, it feels, again, it feels, that feels cliche. So that's definitely cliche, I would say, right?
For you. Yes.
That ta-da part. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think so. Not counterpoint, but just my reaction to that, I think is a lot more positive. And I think just listening to it now even solidified that more, because listening to it without the dialogue, I like when I can hear in the score what is happening on screen to an extent. It does make it feel more operatic. And in that way, I feel so like a moment like this, oops, I hit the play button. A moment like this feels very like Star Wars to me. And, like The Last Jedi, that, there's a whole version of the film on Disney Plus or on the DVD extras where it's without the dialogue, where it's just the music. And it works. It's really cool to see that, because the music says so much. And I think it's much harder to score that way, even though perhaps tropey, perhaps cliche, it would be an opera cliche too. I personally just like it better than when soundtrack music or when a score is more muted, I guess, or is more minimalist at the expense of supporting what's on screen. And I think a lot of the Disney Plus TV shows do the latter, not supporting what's on screen as well. So I'm comparing it to what else I've seen and being grateful for what this is compared to what else I've seen on Disney Plus. And
well, certainly this segment already had all this build up, so you kind of wanted to keep going with it. It would have sounded a little bizarre to just drop off there.
Yeah, I mean, now it could have worked. We just don't know, because we're not presented with that.
Mm-hmm. Now, am I crazy, or when they're talking, I could swear that when Dryden's blathering on before that point, the moment he says, oh no, like he's questioning he's like, oh, you did a good job with this. And Han doesn't know what he's pretending like he doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, it looks real. And the moment he says, whatever that line is where I know it's not real, whatever the line is that displays, I know it's not real, I know this is fake, then I seem to remember there being sort of the music gets kind of playful there. It kind of gets like almost like, here we go into a game. And I don't know if I'm now misremembering that.
Oh, you mean when he says, yes, and I'm saying I would believe you?
Yeah, right. That line or the next line. It's right there. The music gets a little different. Like something comes in.
Oh, I'm curious. Okay, let's hear that, because I don't remember exactly.
Bring me one.
I don't think that's a good idea, Dryden. It's very explosive stuff.
I never asked for anything twice, huh?
Okay. Pedal changed.
You know, it must be that part that we already discussed, and I'm just...
Well, he hasn't gone. No, he hasn't inspected it yet, so we'll... Okay.
It's magnificent.
That's magnificent.
How'd you do it?
Wasn't easy.
No, I mean, how'd you do it? Looks exactly like the real thing.
Do you mean the trumpet thing?
That's because it is the real thing.
Yes.
Yes, and I'm
Dun,
saying,
dun,
I would
dun. Then when it
believe
starts
you.
saying- yeah,
It's that
so-
good.
Oh, when it starts getting faster, like bouncier?
Yeah, it's when it starts getting bouncier. And I guess that's what we were just discussing, but I didn't put it all together in my head that that was the moment that he said that. So anyway, again, yeah.
Yeah, it does get bouncier. And then also there's that muted trumpet going like in the background
Yeah.
before that.
But I, you know, like hearing it all together like that, yeah, there's a bounciness to it that I think is really fun because it's like game on. You know, that's a signal, game on. Like now we all like he just threw the cards down. You know, I thought that was kind of a neat.
Yeah, it
a
really
neat
it does
musical
feel like
trick.
game on there for sure.
Yeah,
And we get like because of the bounciness and because of the tempo, or because of the bounciness and because of it picking up the pace, it gives it more of a sense of tempo. Like we can just keep listening.
But my associate already told me about your plan to rob me of my money and give the real coaxium to Emphas Nest.
Dryden, I don't know what
Like
you're
it's
thinking
soft.
or what Kira may have told you.
No,
I
not
would
Kira.
You can just tell it's
Not
going
Kira.
faster.
Kira,
The
it
dialogue's
turns
going
out,
faster.
has a weak spot for
And the
you,
music
we'll
is-
deal with that later. No, I'm talking about my other associate. Can you come in and join us, please?
And then here where it just stops. It's a tremolo sustaining a high note. And then that.
ta-da! Yeah,
And what I like is this part.
Kid.
Because when the string, you know, when the strings come in there, it is. I do feel that Beckett's a little bit sorry.
yeah. I think he is. But he wouldn't have done it any other way. You know,
Exactly. Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's very
But
true.
anyway, that was all really beautifully done. So that's it. I just that it all it all that whole buildup, and like you said, that their dialogue gets faster and everything gets faster, and it's just like perfectly paced in a way that it's not getting confusing. It's just getting really ratcheted up and exciting, you know, and just makes your heart beat a little faster. It's great.
Yeah. So we are in the last few. Well, we have 3 more seconds,
Why? Come on. Don't look at me like that.
and that's where it stops. Don't look at me like that.
Yeah.
Oh, Beckett.
What are we gonna do with you, Beckett? What are we gonna do with you? Well, we
Well,
do
Han
know
does
what we're
take
gonna.
care
We
of
know what
him.
we're gonna. He
Yeah.
does take care of him. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I like that part too, and we won't spoil it, but I love that. That's a nice twist. Come on, that was pretty surprising. Anyway, whatever.
Where Beckett says, "Don't look at me like that."
No, the future that I won't say.
Oh, right.
His
Right, the
fate.
future.
His fate. Yeah.
Yeah. I found that surprising as well. I remember the first time watching the film, I thought they were going to just reconcile there.
They really misdirect you in a way that it was pretty unlike most movies. Like it misdirected you in a way that you really didn't expect that. Yeah.
Yeah. And also since Han himself has been pretty trusting this whole movie, it sort
Yeah.
of is like a rite of passage almost when he,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, this movie, I guess the whole point of it is it's like a rites of passages for Han Solo.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else about these 5 minutes or about the film in general, or the movie in the film, the music in the film in general that you didn't get to mention?
No, I don't think so. I wouldn't have noticed the you said there was some choir. It's it's Hungarian, right? The
Bulgarian.
what are they called? Bulgarian. That I know that's very traditional, beautiful. I've heard them before, and for some reason I'm forgetting what they're normally. Was that specific group that's kind of famous?
No,
that
no,
people
no.
use. No, it's just
No, no.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that was beautiful, and I hadn't noticed that. I mean, I guess I had, probably sort of subconsciously noticed it, but I was really happy to go through the movie after hearing you mention it. Then that there was both female and male, and I picked both of those up, and I was like, that was really nice and beautifully done. But yeah, it's been really fun to go watch the movie one more time, just doing nothing but listening to the music. And like I had posted on Twitter, I just, in preparation for the show, I went through, which is kind of, I went through a whole, like top 25 best themes of Star Wars lists from YouTube videos, which is not like the best way to experience this stuff, but it was very high quality sound and with my headphones on. And I grew up with Star Wars. I was 9 when it came out. I took Williams' music always for granted, even, all of it, Indiana Jones, Jaws, all of it. I just thought, oh, that's what soundtrack music sounded like. That's what I grew up with. Literally from childhood, thinking this is the norm and not really,
Me too.
appreciating it. And I always have appreciated it much more as I aged, but never really sat down and listened to Star Wars with headphones on. And again, the Imperial March, oh my God. I just last night was the first time I heard it properly. Like I just never really, even when you're listening to the movie with headphones on, you're not listening to it as you would listen to it, just a beautiful recording of it with nothing else and no visuals. And it was magnificent. And it was like, this is just such an interesting piece of music. And it's so hard to step away from it. And I was really grateful for sort of, the opportunity. I wouldn't have thought to do that, and it was really a treat, to go through all of that stuff. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm really glad. I kind of feel the same way where I took John Williams for granted since I grew up with Star Wars. And it has only been, in adulthood that I've really appreciated John Williams for what he has done. Because his music has always just been so close to me that it's hard to just separate. I mean, it's hard to notice it. I think it would have, if I had been several decades older and heard a lot of music before Star Wars came out, and John Williams was even more everywhere. Like if I had heard Star Wars after hearing, I guess what the norm was in the 70s, which was like that those more of synth type of scores. I think that would have been quite shocking in a like a wow, that's different way. Whereas now John Williams is seen as the norm, or as like the blueprint for how to score.
But also, you just can't. It's just like people should know. It's just different. Like even again, watching the movie with a really good quality version of the movie with headphones or with great speakers in your living room, it's not the same as just listening to the soundtrack. It's just different. And, listening to the soundtrack without any visuals is it is a different experience. And I really highly recommend everybody do that. Even with the stuff you've heard 20,000 million times, do it again. Just with, do it before you go to bed when your lights are out and put your headphones on, sit in bed and listen to it. It's so wonderful. It's just wonderful.
And I recommend actually the Empire Strikes Back Symphonic Suite. I think that's what it's called, because it's slightly different and it's fleshed out a little bit more. And in general, John Williams's orchestral suites they tend to be where he is able to develop things even further, or things are retained that didn't make it to the films. I'm actually seeing John Williams at the Hollywood Bowl in less than a couple months, for the second time. I went to his concert last year at the Hollywood Bowl, and I'm going again. And one thing that I really appreciated about that concert was that, the first half was David Newman conducting, like, I don't know, famous film score, famous film excerpts from not just John Williams. Like, I think Breakfast at Tiffany's, probably like The Godfather, probably like Lawrence of Arabia, et cetera, et cetera. And they had visuals on the screen for that. But then for the second half, which was all John Williams conducting John Williams, there were no visuals. And I remember being really happy that there were no visuals during the John Williams part, because when there are visuals, everyone's looking at the visuals. It becomes about the visuals. And I'm sure I still would like to go to like a live film, performance. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But I also like the chance to hear him conduct, not to picture, like not having to stay in time with that. Because for Williams specifically, he likes to have freedom when he conducts, which is why sometimes you'll actually hear a separate version in the film and the soundtrack, because he'll sometimes do an extra take because he doesn't want to do one in such strict keeping locked in with the picture. He'll maybe want to take some more time or like do more rubato in the tempo. And so I really like listening to him without visuals lately. So.
And I think your brain just processes it differently, without the visuals. And that's just a good thing to do. You know what I mean? It's just a different way of enjoying it that is a little more pure, because his music again, if it was another composer, it might not work. But for him, it's the complexity of his music. And it's, you just, again, hear it. It sounds fresher without the visuals. Especially if you grew up with it, you just realize like this stuff is so innovative. This stuff is so extraordinary, and there's nothing like it. There's just nothing. Even though you think of almost John Williams as the cliche, composer, no, there's really nothing like what he really was a groundbreaker.
He's still with us, but he has 90.
Is
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Williams.
Okay, so before we do the Star Wars Music Minute questionnaire, oops, that was a little slip to Star Wars Minute. Hello, Star Wars Minute people. I will run down the themes from this set of minutes and where we are in the soundtrack. So the themes present in this set of minutes are Young Han Solo, the heroic version, composed by John Williams. And then the rest of the themes are composed by John Powell. So we have the Secrets motif, Han and Kira, the DSCH potentially, the Shostakovich reference potentially, and the gang, which is when Beckett comes in at the end. Beckett's gang motif, basically. And in the soundtrack, we are at the end of Kira Knows a Bit More Than Han and the beginning of Double Double Cross. And we will finish Double Double Cross in the next set of minutes. Are you ready for the Star Wars Music Minute questionnaire?
Sure.
Awesome. So this is the same set of 3 questions that every guest answers. And for the purposes of getting to know your taste, and also for the first question in particular, just seeing all the different ways that people think of Star Wars music. With that, question number 1 is, what was that? Did you have a question?
Go ahead.
Okay. Question number 1 is, in exactly 3 words, what does Star Wars sound like?
So I thought sound for me, even though we were so focused on music, I'm one of those people who did still jump to sound, like as more of a representation, because I guess I think of John Williams as so much more. So I'm going to be one of these corny people. Droids, flight, and this is really, people are going to throw rocks at my head. Pew. And I know, pew, pew, pew. I know that's so like stupid, but it's iconic, and it comes from Star Wars, and it was like, it was a brilliant sound. It's an iconic sound, and I love it. Pew, pew, pew. It's so stupid, but yeah, that's Star Wars. That's
more than at least one guest has said for the 3 words, pew, pew, pew.
I almost did that. I almost did that.
So it was droids, flight. Was the second one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
those incredible vroom sounds of. Yeah. I love those sounds. Yeah,
that's a good answer. Yeah. Question number 2 is, what is something related to Star Wars music or sound that you want to learn more about?
So this is maybe a little bit cheating, but it is sound. But I would like to know when they come up with other languages, which sounds like script, but when it's a alien language it's just sound to us, it's just, you have to worry about what it sounds like and how it will come across as a sound that sounds like language. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I was curious about how they come up with alien language that isn't really, well, sometimes it's saying something, but often it's saying nothing. But how you would, I would be really interested to know the lengths they go to. I'm sure they do consult with linguists, or I don't know. But, it seems like they've done a pretty good job with that. I can't think of any really horrible examples. Maybe if I went through, I would. But I'm curious about that process.
Ooh, that's a good question. And there are some, I think you will be satisfied with some of the answers because I agree, it is very good. And they do take a lot of care in that. I always say like,
yeah, it would be easy to mess that up and it would sound terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be easy to just make it sound like the same 3 words, just very obviously a fake language, but the languages do sound lived in. And so, yeah, I won't take this moment to like talk about that because I don't know, of course, the details, but there are interviews online on YouTube, and I'll put one in the show notes where Ben Burt talks about that process, which can be, in mimicking, basically they like mimic the way that people speak other languages. Particularly, a lot has been lifted from various African languages where they will record people and then actually speaking the language and then have people mimic the language. But other than making things sound like their other languages, the mimicry of native speakers in other languages is intentional because in mimicking the way a real speaker actually speaks, you get a lot of nuances. Even though you don't actually have like a thought out language like Lord of the Rings, it's the sound of it sounds nuanced in that way. Question number 3, what is a score or soundtrack that you're fond of besides anything Star Wars?
Well, and this sounds too easy for me to say, but, I do have to say, so, I did 2 series, one on The Shining. The Shining soundtrack is just unbelievable. But I also did a series on Rosemary's Baby. So I'm going to say Rosemary's Baby, actually, because those are 2 of my favorite movies. And certainly, I think they're both perfect 10s. And part of that is because the soundtracks are just so incredible. Rosemary's Baby was composed by Krzysztof Komeda, a Polish person who was a pretty well-known jazz musician in Poland, and he died shortly after Rosemary's Baby. He did most of Polanski's movies, and I think he was the secret ingredient to a lot of his movies, actually. And it's sort of a tragic end, but I think that soundtrack, it's jazz. It's a jazz soundtrack to a horror movie, which is pretty unusual. Real jazz, but also just experimental. He slowed down tapes. He experimented with analog techniques of distorting sound and all of that sort of stuff, way ahead of his time, really predicting a little bit the future of soundtracks. And, he's kind of forgotten. But, oh boy, it is just, every song on it is just, there's even a rock song. They have like a scene where she's throwing a party, and he wrote the rock music that goes with it. And it's amazing. Every single bit of it is just, and again, just what it contributes to the movie, what it contributes to the feeling of horror, the feeling of suspense. I can't say enough about. And so, yeah.
Wow.
Rosemary's Baby soundtrack. Yeah.
You've sold me. I want to see that movie and listen to the soundtrack.
I did an episode on that too, so I'll send you that too. And please, I had a couple of good.
I'm going to put links. I want to put links to that episode, and then I want to put a link to that other the Shining episode where you talked about the music as well. Because
thank you.
I want to listen to them, and I'm sure people listening will want to listen to those as well. Those
are some of my favorite episodes. I love music. I'm not a music expert in any way, but I like music. For me is like food. So that's why I was really excited to be on the show. Like, I need it. I just love music so much. And so I always it was again, this has been so much fun. It's one of my favorite subjects. So thank you, again.
Yay. What's your favorite Star Wars soundtrack? Just curious if you have one.
I don't know, but I mean, so for me, I guess just bits of music pop into my head. So Rey's theme is just beautiful to me. I just love it. Yeah, I love it.
Do you have a favorite Star Wars film, period?
I would say the original recipe will always be my favorite.
So
recipe.
You mean 4 or just like the whole trilogy? Yeah. 4.
No,
you're like
4.
beating Alex.
4,
okay.
If I have to rank, it's 4. But I love Rey's movies, and I actually love The Rise of Skywalker, unlike a lot of people. I loved it. I mean, there
like
are
it
things
too.
about it. I loved it, yeah. So, yeah, good, excellent. Yeah.
I'm one of those as well. Yeah. There's a few of us. I like The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker.
You need to start a club, yeah.
Yeah. You, me, Pete, and Riley.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
us.
and let me just say one more thing. I'm going to get on Discord and see what you people have been saying. And so I hope I don't have to, like, I hope I mean, I know I said some very controversial things, so I will correct myself. I will correct any, I'll make up for whatever criticism, who knows, I'll sort it all out, but I definitely need to check that out. So people who are on that Discord, please allow me to explain myself.
I'm one of those people who loves, like, I don't like when I think it's boring to just like agree with people, and not like I'm not contrarian on purpose, but like I think disagreement, discord, different perspectives are just so fun, and like that makes me feel alive. Like I get so bored of just everyone, thinking the same thing and not having anything to like bounce off of. So when I am critical of thoughts or have something, basically I'm inspired to like actually continue a conversation, that's always a good sign with me.
That's like my favorite personality trait in anybody, because it's hard to find
good.
people like
Me
that.
too.
And so I really
same.
appreciate that. I really
know.
appreciate
I'm
that.
constantly telling my friends, like, I'm not arguing with, like, you don't have to worry about, like, I know you're not trying to offend me. Like, can we just get past that part so we can actually talk about the thing? That's the fun part.
Yeah.
I trust you as my
It's the
friend,
only
so
way
you don't
to-
have to keep like being polite. Like, let's get into it.
That's how progress happens, people. That's how progress happens. We all have to just talk and just like be respectful and like it's also fun, I love debating. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that, listeners, if you want to join my Discord server, I will have a link in the show notes. And the way that you do that is by joining my Patreon. However, guests of the show, I have recently started letting guests join because we all like to talk to guests. Like, you all are fun to talk to. And that's often what we're talking about. There's a lot of people in the Star Wars channel on the server that will often also talk about Star Wars Minute episodes, naturally, because there's a lot of crossover listeners of this show. So thank you to Pete and Alex, of course, for being for being the pioneers of the Movies by Minute format, and particularly giving me the blessing to do Star Wars Music Minute. It's fun keeping up with you all.
Our heroes.
Yes, it is fun keeping up with you. And for those who don't listen to Star Wars Minute, they are also doing solo season at the moment. And intentionally, this show follows along the same pace as them so that people can listen to their 5 episodes and then listen to the corresponding minutes on this show for ultimate nerd synchronicity. Not required, but if you want to be a super nerd, which I think if you're listening to the show, you're probably kind of nerdy. So with that, is there anywhere else people can find you online? I know you're on Twitter. Yes.
I'm on Twitter, and I'm doing a comedy video cast with Joe Dater, who is a Star Wars Minute favorite, Joe Dater, called The Comedy Film Funnel. We talk about comedy movies, which is really refreshing. Just no horror, just fun comedy movies. So that's on YouTube, and and on podcast catchers. Comedy Film Funnel. I'm there doing that. Next one was going to be Airplane. So yeah, it's fun.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah.
It's been ages since I watched that. Awesome. Well, all of Susan's links will be in the show notes, and we're almost done with the movie. Very excited to get to the double cross that is coming up. With that, thank you so much for listening to Star Wars Music Minute, and may the Force be with you.